Psalm 64, to the chief musician, a psalm of David. Hear my voice, O God. In my prayer, preserve my life from the threat of the enemy. So here, he's asking the Lord to hear. He's asking really for the Lord to listen, because we know that the Lord hears everything. I mean, it's not hard of hearing. He knows everything. He hears everything. In fact, he doesn't learn because he already knows. But with the Lord's omniscience in mind, David says, listen to my prayer. In Psalm 66, verse 18, he says, if I regard iniquity in my heart, you don't hear me. You know, the Lord knows everything, but he's not going to listen to the prayers of someone who is rejecting him or disregarding his word. And so, you know, we have to be right with God. We have to respect who he is and what he has done, what he requires of us, and that sort of thing. Okay, so verse 2, hide me from the secret counsel of the wicked, from the rebellion of the evildoers. So this is a parallel, it's called a parallelism in the study of Hebrew. It's two parallel clauses, and these are synonymous. It's the secret counsel of the wicked is synonymous with the rebellion of evildoers. Same thing. This is the rebellion. This is their secret counsel. It's a rebellion. And so there's a word play also with the word Shema or Shema here. You know, the Hebrew Shema. That's in this word. You know, here in verse 1, but also Yisama in verse 10. So beginning and ending the word. There's kind of this word, beginning and ending the psalm, there's this word play with Shema, Yisama. And then we have to keep in mind that David had enemies, and so do we. Ephesians chapter 6, that's why you need in place the armor of God, because you're going to be attacked. Verse 3, who sharpen their tongues like a sword, and bend their bows to shoot their arrows, even bitter words. So the arrows are words. That sounds familiar, doesn't it? The shield of faith, Ephesians 6:16, is to put out the flaming arrows of the evil one, because the evil one is shooting at you. He's shooting at us, you know, the people of God. And like flaming arrows, you know, they can do damage, but you can extinguish them with a shield. Now, in ancient times, they would take a shield and put a skin on the outside of the shield and soak it in water before a battle for putting out fire. And so, may not have always been the case, but it might be in the imagery that Paul has in mind when he writes what he does in Ephesians chapter 6. So here's a portrait of the wicked in verses 3 and 4. And together they're both subordinate to verse 2. Verse 4, that they make secretly, or that they may secretly shoot at good people. They shoot at them suddenly and without fear. So there's two types of people here, evildoers in verse 2 and good people here in verse 4. And the good people suffer attacks. They are attacked by the evildoers. And it would be unbearable, except the Lord has guaranteed the success of his people, not just our survival, but our salvation and vindication. Revelation 2, verse 27, chapter 3, verse 9, and so on. There is in store for us in the ages to come wealth, power, fame, dignity, and all the rest that accompany the glory of God. And you know, the inheritance that we have among the beloved. And so we're headed to glory, and that's what we keep in mind as we suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. Macbeth. You know, take the shield of faith with which you can extinguish all the flaming arrows of the enemy. Ephesians 6:16. And they do it secretly also, to, you know, worth considering, I suppose. they wouldn't get away with it if everyone knew, what they were doing, but secretly they're going to shoot their arrows. And then verse 5, they encourage themselves in their evil plans. They plot to secretly lay snares. They say, who will see? So it's in this psalm is a description of these evildoers who are attacking good people. I saw this one frame cartoon. It wasn't really a cartoon, but it was an image, like a cartoon that someone had drawn. No, actually, it was a picture, is what I'm thinking of. I was thinking of something else. I was combining these two things in my thinking. But no, it was a picture of this nice family sitting in church, and there was a caption that went with it. It was like, this is who the enemy wants to destroy. Just a nice family sitting there in church, and, whatever you want to say about church, there's a lot of nice people in church trying to do what is right, trying to do what is good, and they are being attacked, and the enemy would really like to destroy those people, the good people. But the enemy works through people, and so a lot of times the attack comes from other people, and we need to recognize that they're not the enemy necessarily, but the enemy might be using them to bring an attack, and the attack is real. The danger is real. It's a good idea to have in place the armor of God to fortify yourself and your family with prayer and godly Christian fellowship and the study of His Word and all the rest. Okay, now their conscience is not functioning as though it had been seared. 1 Peter 4, verse 2. Because of their sinful heart, mankind is at work with the enemy. 2 Corinthians 4:4, the enemy has blinded the minds of unbelievers so that they can't recognize the truth, but also he has them ensnared so that they will be usable, and exploited for his evil purposes. Verse 6, they devise iniquities, they perfect a shrewd scheme, but the inward thought of every one of them, both the inward thought of every one of them and their hearts are mysterious. So shrewd, literally a search. It's a noun from searching. And sinners are often crafty, and a lot of times you'd like to tell them, look, if you would just invest that effort into something good, you'd really, be able to build something. You'd have something to show for it. But if you waste all your efforts on evil doing and, trying to subvert or circumvent the law and do evil, you're just harming yourself. You're harming other people. How much better it would be to do what is right. But you can't tell people that. A lot of times they're deceived and they're ensnared. They're slaves to sin and so on. But they're crafty. A lot of times they are very shrewd in their plans and deeds. So verse 7, but God will shoot at them with an arrow. They will suddenly be wounded. So in contrast to the arrows that they shoot with their speech, the Lord has some arrows for them, and the Lord doesn't miss. And so verses 7 through 10, we see the results of God's judgment. Verse 8, so He will make their own speech to fall upon them. All that see them shall flee. So the Lord eventually frustrates the plans of evildoers and flee. Those who see them will flee because they're publicly humiliated. People don't want to be a part of that. They're gonna be gone. They're gonna disappear, just like the phony friends, that these evildoers are famous for being. They're going to lose their companions as well. The calamity of sinners also is a warning to others. And it's important to hold people accountable so that others can see that example of the frustration of sin. And then verse 9, and all people shall fear and shall declare the work of God, for they shall wisely consider what He does. So the Lord is righteous, and He is glorified in the judgment of sinners. Everything he does brings glory to his name, and in blessing people and showing mercy, but also in judging sin and being righteous in how he judges. It glorifies his name. And the fact that the Lord punishes evildoers makes people think about their own actions, maybe reconsider for themselves, what they are about to do. And then verse 10, the righteous shall rejoice in the Lord and shall trust in him, and all the upright in heart will celebrate. That's right. If you're doing what is right, you like to see righteousness. You like to see evil fail and good prevail. Like that song. I heard the bells on Christmas Day, ringing, singing on their way, the world revolved from night to day. It's Longfellow. Okay, so the righteous are going to rejoice. We're going to rejoice forevermore. And we can rejoice every time we come into the presence of the Lord. The fruit of the Spirit is joy. And there's joy that wells up within us, accompanying the peace that passes understanding, that just is part of our inheritance and what we look forward to, but it's something we can have right now when we come into the presence of the Lord. And so the scoffers, they're going to say, where is his coming? 2 Peter 2:4, but the Lord will indeed return. He will soon come to judge the living and the dead. And in the meantime, he's going to punish people for their sin. The wrath of God is already being revealed. Romans chapter 1, verse 18. But right now, the mercy and grace of God is being extended to those who will respond in faith to his word, turn to him, and be saved. Okay, so this is Psalm 64.